I'm Steve Touw, CTO at Immuta, and we're excited to introduce you to our platform. The Immuta Data Security Platform has one goal: to simplify data security so that you can unlock the full value of your data. Immuta is built on three main pillars: discover, secure, and detect. The platform provides sensitive data discovery, security and access control, and user and data activity monitoring. Every organization has some sensitive data, whether it's PII, financial transactions, health information, or intellectual property. How do we protect this data while still giving the right level of access? The first thing you'll see is the data sources you've registered. In this case, it's Databricks and Snowflake data sources. You can see the tables here, which include credit card data, financial information, and HR data. Let's look closer at the HR data in Snowflake. For each data source, you'll see a summary dashboard showing the query history, policies, and who in the organization uses that data. When you register tables, Immuta automatically scans the data and uses built-in algorithms to classify it. This view shows the columns, and the pills show the discovered entities. Immuta uses over 60 classification algorithms, but you can also customize them as needed. And the classifications aren't static. Immuta actively tracks schema changes and is constantly updating the classifications. Immuta can also leverage metadata from your existing data catalog if you're already using Elation, Calibra, or another catalog. The next step is figuring out who will access the data, and in a similar fashion, Immuta integrates with your identity manager to bring in the most current user metadata. You'll reference the user metadata when building the policies. So now that you've classified the data, the next step is to identify potential security gaps. We do that with Immuta Detect. On the main dashboard, you'll see a graph of the number of queries over time, the active data sources, active users, and a list of key tables. If you go to the People tab, you'll see a dashboard showing active users and their query activity. Now we can start to identify risk. For example, Dr. John Doolittle has run 63 queries and just over 50% are accessing sensitive data. Drilling further, you can see that Dr. Doolittle was querying that HR data we looked at earlier. You can even look at his exact query and notice that 10 of the columns were sensitive and 2 were highly sensitive. Clicking on the link to the data table will show you the specific columns. Keep in mind, the data classifications of sensitive versus highly sensitive occurred during the data discovery process. In this case, we found that Dr. Doolittle is accessing Social Security numbers. Given his role in the organization, that may be a security concern that requires the team to take action. That's where Immuta Secure comes in. Let's take a look at how to write global data policies to protect the data. We will highlight two types of policies: a subscription policy that applies access at the table level, and a data policy that applies even finer grain access at the row, column, and cell level. To start, let's look at what Dr. Doolittle can see without Immuta. If he was querying in Databricks, as we're showing here, you can see that Social Security numbers are visible in the open. Switching to Snowflake, you can see that he can query that HR table and see the Social Security numbers here as well. So how do you protect this data? The simplest approach is a subscription policy. You may think of this as table grants. On the Policy tab in Immuta, you can see we've built a policy that says we're allowing people with degree doctorate to subscribe to any tables with columns tagged PHI. Since Dr. Doolittle has an attribute degree doctorate, he can see the PHI. We already have a policy here that we could edit, but let's instead make it more interesting and build a new policy. Let's say that the compliance team is requiring that anyone in the business who needs access to highly sensitive data must take a training course before being allowed access. So, in the Global Policy Builder, we name the policy training requirement and define it to say that a user must possess the attribute training to view PHI. Then we're going to apply it to any data source with columns tagged as PHI. Let's activate the policy. Now, when we go back to our list of policies, you'll see that we have two policies controlling access to PHI, and they may be in conflict. What's awesome is that Immuta will merge the two policies so they don't conflict. Looking here at the Policy tab for HR data, we can see that the combined policy allows users to subscribe when they have PHI and the degree doctorate. Our user, Dr. Doolittle, does not have the required training, so we cannot see the data. So we've implemented a policy on the fly to control access to the data, but it was pretty coarse. So let's make it more interesting. Let's create what we call a data policy to mask the Social Security numbers. As before, name the policy and then define how we want to mask the data. For this example, let's keep it straightforward and choose a constant. Name it redacted and apply it to everyone everywhere with the Social Security number tag. Let's activate the policy. Now, the new policy shows up in our list of policies. You'll also notice that we did not have to write unique policies for each data source. Immuta just recognizes the tags and applies the policy globally. And now, if we go back to Databricks, you can see Dr. Doodle run a query and see the HR data with the redacted social security numbers. And if he queries in Snowflake, the policy is enforced there as well. Immuta can also apply more advanced controls, including row access policies, masking, as well as conditional masking.